Hey, what's up guys, Totallydubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review on the ViewSonic XG2530. Now this is a 25-inch 1080p monitor that runs at 240 Hz. Now first, pricing. It can be found for around £400 in the UK, upwards to £550 depending on the source. In the US it can be found for $450, links will be down in the description below. Also in the description below will be its competitors. Two of the monitors that I've looked at, the Asus PG248, which is a 180Hz monitor, and the AOC AG251FZ, which is also 240Hz monitor, will be in the description below because they can be found for £400 and £350 respectively. So make sure you check them out in terms of competitors which offer a similar sort of spec. So speaking about spec, what do you get for the money? So it's a 25-inch monitor, it has a TN panel, it's got full HD 1080p, yes, only 1080p. It has aspect ratio of 16:9, and it's got a quoted response time of 1 millisecond. In terms of the inputs and connectivity, you've got HDMI 1.4, HDMI 2.0, and DisplayPort, I think it's 1.2 on top of my head. You've also got a 3.5mm jack output and a USB 3.0, two USB 3.0 outputs as well to connect up to your PC. There's also two 2-watt speakers within the monitor itself. They're pretty basic and in all honesty useful only for Windows notifications, but they're there nevertheless, which is also useful. It does have VESA 100x100mm mount as well, in case you want to put in your own stand. So let's talk about the other features. First of all, AMD FreeSync. So yes, it has AMD FreeSync within it. So if you have a compatible AMD graphics cards, which I don't unfortunately, then you'll benefit from AMD FreeSync, which is great in order to have a tear-free experience. But what about the rest of the monitor? First, well, let's talk about the build quality before we get into the panel and the gaming. So in terms of the build quality, I think ViewSonic have done a fantastic job. Starting from the stand. It's a very solid stand, even though it's made out of plastic. The logo of XG over here is embroidered on it, and it looks very nice. It almost reminds me of a foil sticker on Counter-Strike. If those of you who know what that is, you'll know exactly how cool that looks. And then in terms of the stand looks itself, it's got like a sort of brushed aluminium look to it, even though it's only plastic. The stand is very sturdy, holds the monitor well in place. It can height adjust, do a full 180, so you can pivot it all the way around. And in terms of pivoting, it goes up and down like that as well, around side to side. The bezels are also relatively small, and they're not too distracting, and the monitor is not too pushed back, far too pushed back from the bezels, and therefore it again isn't too distracting. So I like what ViewSonic have done over here. However, the on-screen display is a completely different ball game, and in all honesty, I think ViewSonic really have to look at this because it is really confusing. There are so many options, which usually wouldn't be a bad thing, but the options can confuse people. Just zooming in there so you guys can actually see the on-screen display, maybe zoom in just a little bit more so you can see. So first of all, you've got the gaming settings. And these can be overridden if you go into view mode, which doesn't make much sense. I think ViewSonic had to kind of put them together all in one setting so that it makes more sense for the average Joe. Nevertheless, within gaming settings, I've got Custom 1. Within Custom 1, I've got various other settings. For example, the overdrive, or here we call it Rampage Response. And here I've got it on fastest. Going down from this, you've got the monitor hertz cap, which you've also got, if you can see over here on the main menu, which again doesn't really make much sense. Black stabilization, advanced DCR, brightness, which I've set to 80, which is plenty enough. Color adjust, which you can go within over here and change the contrast, color saturation, and gamma. But if I go back, you might be able to see over here within display, I've also got color adjust and gamma controls. So it's a bit confusing, and I think ViewSonic have to look at this, but I do like the thorough use of the OSD. In other words, you've got so many options to choose from. Just to let you know, in terms of my own color temperature, I've got red at 97, I've got green at 98, and blue at 100, just in case you were wondering for my settings as well. In terms of the color adjust, again, you've got color space, color range, gamma, which is on 2.2, which I think the default's at 2.4, color saturation and black stabilization. Again, not the most obvious things to look through, and not the most obvious things to understand. Input select, view mode again, which I said, which bypasses what you use in the game settings, audio adjust to adjust the volume, and then a setup in order to change the resolution notice and whatnot. So in terms of the OSD, yes, it's comprehensive, but it is confusing, and I would have liked if ViewSonic kind of addressed that either via firmware or just in order just to adjust that going forwards. So how about its panel quality? Yes, it's a TN panel, and yes, it is washed out versus an IPS panel, and yes, it's not as color accurate or will hit the sRGB space, color space, as an IPS PLS panel will do. However, that's not to say the monitor is not good. I actually found it the colors to actually be vibrant and really popping, which is fantastic. If you're looking in terms of a monitor for gaming, then you want colors to pop. You want images to be vibrant, or kind of not overly saturated, but have that saturation to them. And in this respect, the ViewSonic has it. It's really nailed it down, and for a TN panel, it's actually very impressive. Again, if you're a videophile or a photographer of sorts and want to edit videos and photos, no, this is not the monitor you should get. You should look at a PLS or IPS panel instead, or even VA. You shouldn't be looking at a TN panel in the first place. But as this is not aimed at those type of people, it's aimed at gamers, I think the panel is fantastic for the intended use. Again, as I said, it's not as color accurate as other panels out there, but nevertheless, it's great for its intended use. And I must say, I'm very much impressed in terms of a TN perspective, how well ViewSonic have kind of optimized this monitor for your everyday use. Now, what about its gaming performance? Now, before I jump into Counter-Strike, I do want to mention one thing. Frame skipping. Now, frame skipping is something that I tested on the AOC monitor, and I found it unable to hit 240 Hz. In fact, it only hit, I think, 144 Hz out the box. And frame skipping is very important when it comes to overclocking a monitor. Now, of course, these monitors are natively 240 Hz, but nevertheless, they are kind of sort of factory overclocked. In the AOC monitor review, I actually found a TFT Central review which mentioned that an AMD graphics card, due to AMD FreeSync, enabled 240 Hz. But an NVIDIA card, which is the card that I use, it's a GTX 960, couldn't do 240 Hz for that reason. It's not NVIDIA's fault, it was actually due to the way the panel was made. In this respect, I tested it on 144 Hz and 240 Hz. At 144 Hz, I had no frame skipping problems at all. At 240 Hz, I had the odd frame skip, which was really odd. I'm not really sure why, and I'm not sure if the camera can actually pick it up or you guys can see, but essentially there's a block missing over here out of all the lines. If I go over here, you can see there, that's a perfect line at 240 Hz. So it's a little bit odd to see the odd frame missing on certain images that I had, whereas on other ones they were perfectly fine. In comparison to the AOC monitor, which regularly frame skipped, I can say that this monitor does achieve 240 Hz on an NVIDIA graphics card, so I wouldn't worry about that. So yes, it passes the test. Yippee! So now let's talk about gaming. So 240 Hz and a low quoted response time, can the monitor does what it says on the tin? Does it do what it says on the tin? So first of all, in terms of ghosting. Now, ghosting is obviously quite important for gamers out there which are going to be playing more beautiful games because you don't really care as much of like sort of lines appearing. But I must say the ViewSonic does a fantastic job. In fact, one of the best in the business. In comparison to having the rampage response, as they call it, to standard versus on fastest, I noticed hardly any difference in terms of ghosting. Fastest had a slight difference, slightly less inverse ghosting, but the difference is so minimal that I would highly suggest using fastest on no matter what you're using. In terms of the response time of the monitor, both on standard or even fastest, as in the both extremes, the monitor was really responsive and worked very well. It's an extremely responsive monitor and I had no problems in terms of that. It's probably one of the most responsive monitors I've actually come across, so it's very impressive from ViewSonic there. Now, in terms of the actual input lag, which is something that most people miss, I felt that the input lag is not super high and not super low. It sits in the mid ground, which is slightly a shame because for a 240 Hz monitor that has a fantastic response time, I would have expected a monitor with a low input lag, and that wasn't really the case with this monitor. So in terms of gaming perspective, yes, it's great in terms of competitive gaming, and yes, it does work, and the 240Hz is there for your disposal, but is it something I would use? In all honesty, in terms of my recommendation, I would highly suggest buying a 1440p 144Hz monitor for the same price versus a 240Hz monitor for that same price. The 240Hz monitor, I still cannot see the real benefits of it, and I play Counter-Strike at a global level every single day, and in all honesty, just didn't see the benefits. That is my honest opinion, guys. If you like, comment, subscribe, let me know in the comments below what you think, and anyway, that's my unbiased, independent review that I thought I should share with you guys. Alright guys, TotallyDubbed out. Bye bye.